Greetings. My name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video on YouTube. Out to you because you're watching. And it's intended for students of mine, Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, core new core students, and as I have historically projected, it's meant for anybody that's looking to survive as a Pilates instructor. So if that fits in, you're welcome to and encouraged to listen in as well. View, I guess it would be the thing. View. Two things. First of all, here I am on YouTube, and then I plan on putting the notes that are the basis of this broadcast on Facebook the way I usually do, and just give a synopsis of what I hope to cover here in this broadcast. Okay? And so, gosh, when you have a lot to say, and it comes from a lot of different places, it's interesting to organize. So first off, this is an envelope, and it's made of leather and it's black. And when I hold it in front of somebody, I want to give them my card. I open it up and take out a label which has nothing on the back, just Cornu, because that's the best thing I could ever give them, is this visual image of Cornu, because it points to the fact of the physics of Cornu tension. And Cornu tension has become more and more my focus because it's the most important thing I have to communicate. And as usual, I'm always trying to communicate to you what I feel is most important in case I don't have a chance to speak out again, profess again. I don't know about speaking out, but just make my profession, right? And so the first thing on my list is don't underestimate, please, consider not underestimating the importance of what you know about Cornu tension, and the importance of Cornu tension itself, and that's why what you know about it is so important, because it has to do with the body and how the body and the biology of the body accomplishes the physics of the movement that it does. And more than just mirroring more than just the physicality of oppositional rotation between axes that we have in our body, we're capable of Cornu tension. And Cornu tension is oppositional rotation between axes. So there's no slack between ears and shoulders, and when you oppositionally rotate, you create tension between those two axes, right? The same thing is possible between shoulders and hips, less so between hips and knees and ankles and metatarsals, because there's bones in there without a space to expand away from. That's not connected to bone. It's my primitive and crude way of explaining that. But see, in here, there's only the spine, and in here, there's only the spine. It's all muscularity connecting between axes of rotation. That's the vernacular, or that's how I'd say that. So my number 2 title would be core new tension in Pilates. And right after that, core new tension in golf. Because I got asked to talk about core new tension or expose my teaching about the core and core new tension to the golf community. I think you know this if you've listened to most recent. And that in itself is a head trip because I come from a lifetime of professing myself to be a Pilates instructor, and certainly out of the pursuit of being the best Pilates instructor I could be, I came to, I think, sense and then perceive and identify core new tension in the body. And core new tension is how the body engages itself in oppositional rotation between axes. The two main things that come out of that for me are a direct sensation of alignment between those two axes. It's not an intellectual calculation. It's a sensation that feeds you whether you're aligned or not, which is, to me, pretty powerful. And the other thing is that in aspiring toward the shape of the engagement, the Euler curve or the Cornu spiral, it's an ideal in a way that gives you that sensation of alignment and makes more uniform distribution of the load of the body, the way it engages muscles. Okay? So core new tension gives you a sensation of alignment and a more even distribution of the load of your body by how it uniformly engages musculature in that effort, right? In engaging in core new tension. When you engage in core new tension, it takes 2 points to, you got two axes of rotation, and when you engage them, the axes can separate. I want to say necessarily separate, but I'm not sure about that. I mean, you can try to do this and stay all crunched in, but the true elegance of the engagement of core new tension results in a tension that elongates the spine, therefore decompressing it, which is what, of course, Pilates is famous for. And I'm only pointing to the fact that whether it's in Pilates or in golf, or dance, or martial arts, or yoga, or meditation, it's the physics that the body finds itself in that has it reaching for and engaging in core new tension. And to the extent that whether you're sitting or standing or running or jumping or flying, the way you engage your body can give you sensational feedback, literally sensational feedback, about your alignment in space and your connectedness of the alignment you have within your body from endpoint to endpoint. And by endpoint, I just mean axis of rotation. If you looked right here, right at down the line, you wouldn't see the axis of rotation that the hips are in a grip in. You just see the endpoint of the line. That's what I mean by endpoint. So I still have an ability to post on a forum in a popular golf website. but trying to come out and say that the core that everyone talks about is a grip at the hips, and there are more than one grip in the body, and in the way the body engages those grips one to the other provides sensation of alignment and more uniform usage, and also literally put you in a tension that stretches you out straighter. So in whatever your athletic endeavor, you know, I think of golf and I think of hips, shoulders, and ears. And I don't know, maybe you want your, see, I don't know anything about golf. I just know that in physics, when your ears and your shoulders are lined up within your hips, when you're lined up in your body, there's less stress. Because stress left unchecked leads to pain. And pain is usually what brings somebody in the door to try out Pilates. Because in trying to get out of pain, a quick pill didn't work, so a doctor's surgery is an option that people want to try to avoid. So gravity, forces, the issue of alignment, right? Alignment is sensational via tension between 2 points. And that tension between 2 points not only makes alignment sensational, it triggers more uniform engagement, or it facilitates more uniform engagement. But I like to think of triggers because in a way, when you are creating a rotational kind of energy at 2 different points, and using that energy interaction between those 2 points, it takes on a lot of the characteristics of what fluorescence is like. And to the extent that you create opposition or rotation between 2 axes, like the shoulders and the ears, there's not only the rotational effect happening, but there is that distributed effect of the muscles reaching for an expression of an ideal shape. And I encourage you to do more research about why the Cornu spiral, also known as the Euler curve, 2 famous mathematicians, arriving at the same shape in different ways, meaning that it's there, they identified it, and now my claim to fame is that I identified that kind of tension in the human body because nobody else had been pointing to it until now. And if you can say, oh yeah, here's all the documentation, and here's the guy that did that, da-da-da-da-da, then we're arriving at the same place at different times, just like I think anyone that really pursues the truth in Pilates will end up with, at the ideal that the exists within the original work, right? And however the interpretation or the expression, the underlying truth or ideal will still be there. So, I rarely talk about the arms and the legs. So this is like a number on my list that we're holding up for Facebook Live. I hold up the number of fingers to match the number that's on the text so that there's hopefully an identification between what I have in text versus what I have in numbers. And so, at the hips, let's start there. At the hips, the core is a grip at the hips. Now, if you just take that rotational ability, that grip, to its end range, right? if you let your position of your spine, your bones go to it, you'd end up in a tuck, right? You don't have to, but end range at rotation at the hips would then lead you into the bones moving as well, into tucking. And I'm going off into what I didn't want to talk about. All right, so when you're trying to explain this, take a piece of paper and wrap it up. And then we know that, you know, going to the inside and drawing in tighter from the inside, right? That's how you engage your core. The musculature that shuts off excretion, just stuff that's inside that goes outside, you know, poop and pee. The muscles that shut that all off are part of the heart of what defines in here who we are versus out there, which isn't us anymore, if it just escaped us, right? But the key distinction, a key distinction as an identity of a human body is its muscularity that distinguishes in here from out there, okay? And so I'm headed toward arms and legs, and I'm actually on the subject of legs, and that the core is a grip at the hips. And to the extent that you go to the interior and draw your grip in tighter from the inside, that helps give a student a perspective on what they're reaching to engage and the muscular involvement that may be asleep that you're trying to awaken, right? When it comes to legs, our legs, so I'm just tearing this in two. Our legs, right, are, if we were perfectly flexible at our hips, it's the challenge. If we were completely flexible at our hips, then the rotational dynamic out our hips would go straight out like a spiral. Follow that, right? Straight out like a spiral. And some might say that the reason dancers who are only reaching for a degree of turnout or end range and turnout are subject to injury, some would say maybe, because there's no oppositional rotation in the opposite direction, like turn in, to counterbalance the turnout, so that the turnout just isn't resting on end range, but exists within a dynamic oppositional tension between turnout and turn in, between rotating the limb one direction versus rotating the limb the other direction. And if rotation out of limb is turnout like this, then an oppositional rotation to turn in would be like this. And so if this is turn out and this is turn in, you have this oppositional rotation, rotational dynamic in the leg that achieves itself by connecting at the end point of either the knee, the ankle, or the metatarsals. Ideally the metatarsals, because that's the last end point at that extremity in the body, right? The last point at which the leg achieves any kind of rotational control or grip is at the metatarsals, the toes and the metatarsals, that grip, right? We have a grip around the ears. We have a grip that we can establish at the hips and the shoulders. And then I talked about legs, and now this is about the arms. There's nothing different about the physics that we live in and the means in which we accomplish movement through our limbs. And so the same dynamic of oppositional rotation that goes out our legs and counterbalances to avoid end range and injury and vulnerability from being at end range, or vulnerability from only being engaged in one direction that you could counterbalance, right? Oppositional tension. There's shoulders and ears, and that's oppositional rotation between two axes. That's cornutension. You know, I don't have a name for oppositional rotation along one axis, but that's how I think about what the legs are trying to do, or how the legs are trying to engage in order to be uniformly engaged, in order to be as light in space as you can be, because your musculature is as evenly distributed as possible, right? So all of the rowings, all of the boomerang on the mat, all of this arm movement through space can be artistic, or it can be structurally sound, meaning the structure of the engagement of the body is meant to support its own weight in whatever dynamic it finds itself in. So the rotation at the shoulder, as I've talked about this before, is one direction. The main direction of rotational strength in the shoulders is as you see it there, going that way. But at the elbow or the muscles in the arm can make the elbow reach up, try to go the opposite direction of the shoulder. But you hold the shoulder in place and rotate the shoulder as high as you can, and then take the wrist and oppose the rotation of the wrist. And you can see hopefully what I mean about the limbs having oppositional tension. They maintain out the limb to be as effortless as possible. With ease and grace, you move because of how you engage your body. All right. Remember that the core is a grip at the hips. And if your mind just doesn't even know that yet, just make a leap to the acceptance of the reality of how the biology has evolved over its whole experience to control rotational dynamic at the hips and at the shoulders and in the ears, and that those interacting rotational dynamics are the means of accomplishing the movement that it seeks. And all of that about cornutension is just cornu, meaning it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Pilates. You can apply Pilates, you can apply cornu to Pilates just like you would apply cornu to golf. It's backward in a way, because cornu came out of my pursuit of understanding Pilates, but the understanding of cornutension goes way beyond Pilates to how the body moves through space no matter what the body's doing. So one of my titles, I don't know what I was going to say about it, is, at what level do you listen? At what level do you listen? It's like having the mute on television, or even within television, what are you willing to listen to, or channels that you even have on? You know, at what level are you even willing to listen to what's out there? And I had a reference to the, this is just staccato, random notes, so please don't expect more than just the random notes. Do you remember reading, if you ever did, The Pearl by a guy I think named John Steinbeck? And it's about a pearl that you find, and it's really precious, and what happens from the discovery of the pearl, and what you do with it, and how it affects you, and all of that. I compare that in some ways to a person's discovery of Pilates, and it could be the same thing about discovery of core new tension, insofar as something that's rare and precious and not everybody has, that it becomes the question of then what do you do with it. And so these are sort of related, because my notes are the pearl, the scout, and the adventurer. The pearl is, say, what you find or discover. If you're a scout, then you can take that discovery back to the wagon train. I use that metaphor of scout to wagon train. Or you can leave the pearl where it is with a note, so when the wagon train gets there, it will discover what you've discovered, right? And then there's the adventurer who, in discovering the pearl, just goes on the adventure with the discovery of the pearl only being part of the adventure. And the distinction being there's no communication back to the wagon train about whatever is discovered in the adventure. The scout, the function is to report back, at least report back, and perhaps I'm arguing the case, not necessarily go back, right? And so then the other point there here is that the scouting report in this metaphor I'm drawing is media, in that here I am sharing with you a live recording of my scouting report, and that's primarily in the consideration that it may take a while for the report to ever make it to the train, and in terms of the train, it may not even be in existence yet within a time frame that will encompass my time frame. Because of course, why? That's my number one topic to close, but I can't close yet because I haven't talked about Pilates. But live can't live forever, right? So, the pearl, the scout, the adventurer, my claim to fame as a human being, and more than enough, is just identifying core new tension. And having someone write to me recently, and that identification happened for them over a couple decades ago, very pleasing and very confirming that you never know, you can't pick your fans and you can't pick when they show up. You can only do your best to make as good a scouting report as you wish, if that's your thing. See, maybe it's all just adventure and it doesn't matter. My inclination is to be the hermit and hold out the light of my experience so that those traveling in my area may receive some benefit from the light I try to produce, right? And in this case, the light is Michael Miller trademark training materials, like this live broadcast, and hopefully helping you identify what others have as well for a long time now, the existence of core new tension and how your ability to embrace it gives you the benefit of stability and alignment and uniform usage. Okay, that's my last two things. Alright, so, alright, good, good. It's tough to cover notes when they all seem so heavy and heartfelt. So, all of that was about coordinating tension, excuse me, and none of it had to do with Pilates. But the two things that I have for you in regards to Pilates are, now my title on this would be Observer, and within parens, Spirit, and then next to that would be a Participator, and next to that would be Soul. And this gets really philosophical, and you can just stop watching if all you care about is core tension. Because Joe's favorite quote was in a watercolor. You see this? I know the language is backwards and all, but this watercolor was in Joe's studio, and it's by Schiller from a play. And the person that I found that translated the entire play, when you go looking for an interpretation of what does Es ist der Geist, es ist den Körperbau actually mean, I took the person that translated the entire play at their translation, which is, it is the soul which builds itself a body. Now, I wasn't too happy to necessarily hear that or read that, because soul to me has a religious implication, and I've adhered to the idea of spirit as the observer being the necessary capacity within the human to get complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit. So if Joe were alive, I'd be love to have a conversation with him about his use of the English word spirit, and if it is the same as or has any nuances or distinctions from the word Geist in his favorite quote by Schiller. Now, if you know me well, you know I've often referred to spirit as the observer that is acknowledged in quantum physics, yes? And that's the tie to the human capacity to be in their body and their mind, and then that capacity of spirit or observer, or as Joe defines, completely concentrating on the purpose of the exercise, that issue there in that subject. Well, the more I learn about quantum physics, the more quantum physicists make a distinction between the observer observing some object separate from that object, as though the observer can be separated from what is observed, to the observer being the participator and involved in what is being observed. Pretty cool. So to me, what's pleasing about that, or how I line that up in my head a little bit, is that in the pursuit of Pilates, body, mind, and spirit, the observer works fine in that you have to be present and observing what's going on or concentrating, but that quantum physics then takes the observer and casts not a distinction between what is observed and the environment, that what is observed is happening in, right? The participator, not just the observer. Well, in that regard, when you take Schiller's quote of "it is the soul which builds itself a body," well, there, my sense of the word soul is that it's the soul's participation that makes the body even happen, right? And I like that. I want to say you gotta like that. And then to body, mind, and spirit, where spirit is the observer, if spirit then really takes on the characterization of not being separated from what is being observed just because you're observing it, you're an actual participator as an observer. Maybe all of this is sophistry and wordplay, I know, but it's meaningful to me, and it's meaningful to when you're an instructor with a student. What are you calling upon from them as an observation? It's not like you're saying observed and be removed from it, right? You're saying be connected to your senses, be listening all the time, listening, right? And in that listening, there's participation. And so the thing that came right from my wellspring of preponderance is observing a participation. And from what I'm saying, I would think that you could easily argue, yes, that in being the observer or in observing, there's participation, because you could not be paying attention, you wouldn't be observing, and so there wouldn't be any participation, right? Simple. Pure. And in that regard, this whole Pilates thing is about human capacities and completely coordinating them in a choreography that's meant to be a response to, a biological response to the physics that it finds itself in. All right, so that was one of the two things I had to say about Pilates. And the second thing, I get to talk about Bruce Lee and Pilates. Maybe in one of Bruce Lee's interviews, he talks about an honest movement being very hard to find. It's very hard to find an honest movement. And I don't know what he meant by that. I also have watched that classic piece of footage where Bruce and Chuck Norris are facing off against one another. And what I observed was Bruce seeking to evoke, there you go, good word, to evoke a sincere response from his opponent, and off of that sincere response, he could come up with an honest move. See what I'm saying? You can't just like ploddingly go out and have an honest move, because an honest move, I think, has to be a response to other honest movement. I think I've accomplished pointing out what I wanted to point out, and I'm not sure what I wanted to make of it. Perhaps other than what I just pointed out, is that for me, when Bruce says an honest move is really hard to come by, I agree. And in witnessing how he interacted combatively with an opponent, it seemed that he needed to elicit some kind of a response that he could respond to honestly. And perhaps that meant purposefully or directly, because in a dance interaction, there needed to be something to interact with. And so I think that in my interpretation of having an honest move is happening in space and a response to the space in which it's happening. Okay. So in my broadcast, there was two things that I was thinking about. I was broadcasting two subjects. One was core nutention and the other was about Pilates. I spent more time on core nutention than I did on Pilates. And I encourage you to assume a confidence in knowing about this stuff, because nobody else will give you confirmation of it except you, that you can find it sensationally in your body, and especially if you're sophisticated enough to connect shoulders to hips, right? And even if not shoulders to hips, if on holding your legs out in space, knowing that an endpoint of tension at the ball of the foot helps distribute load and engage the musculature more evenly, all of that. Core nutention. It's a biomechanical thing, and it's really why I have this leather envelope, and hopefully not being prideful at all, just, well, proud, yes, but without the arrogance, just the pleasure of being able to open it up and take out a sticker that is the image, and without any other agenda to it, just being able to hand out the image of Cornu. And what I said before is, you can order stickers from me, come on, and experience that same satisfaction. I get satisfaction, I think, out of trying to put my best foot forward and knowing what that is, and trying to do my best about empowering other people with what it means. Because see, once you turn a person on to the idea that, yeah, they can engage in core nutention and they can feel an engagement of musculature that gives feedback to them about alignment and how heavy the body is. So, and then it was really deep about Joe, and it's hard enough in the public to refer to spirit being something beyond the mind, because we all live in our mind, and we all have our own religion, and we don't want another religion. But really, it's just this sensation part, the observing part, the situational awareness, the listening, is that you got to pay attention. And then it really helps to know what you're paying attention on and what sensation you're listening for, so that you can find what you're after, both in the performance of the ideal expression of the movement, the exercise, and at a depth mentally and physically and spiritually. I hate to use that word that way, but the listener in it, not the interpretation of it, but the participation of it, the presence of participation. in listening, in observing all of that. All right? Thank you for listening, and feel free to make friends on Facebook if you're not, to see what the synopsis of what just went by is like. And I'm getting more accustomed to doing this on YouTube, which means a broader audience and a less filtered audience and more control later of my data, my recordings, right? So I encourage you to follow suit. And what I didn't make clear, maybe I did, on my golfers thing was, I also sell training materials that are word files. There's just word for word instructions. In this case, I'm selling how to cue a person, yourself or others, in finding coordinating tension between the ears and the shoulders. So all of this teaching has been for free, but perhaps for a fee later. You never know. Create your media now, and you never know what you can do with it later. And in sharing your media, right, you are fulfill the role of scout, in that you take where your passion has taken you and synthesize what you can of it, and then in your media you leave it for those who come after you, maybe long after you're dead, that are looking for the kind of point of view that you have put out, right? So, share now. Share what you do now. I bet that sounded mumbled. I said, share what you do now. And so I think I'm complete on this. I got to hand you one of my stickers twice in the broadcast. And no matter what you do, Pilates or not, those stickers will help you communicate this tension to somebody and have it stick, because it gives an indication about how the shoulders and the ears are supposed to go, and from there the rest of the body, right? And there are even magnets. Get a load of this. I love magnets. And my story on magnets is that they usually end up on a refrigerator, and they usually travel with whoever got the magnet, regardless of who else uses the refrigerator. And because it's an actual magnet, and magnets is a part of physics, and it just sort of is, and it's an energy of its own, coordinating tension I don't think has anything to do with magnetism, but the fact of coordinating tension is like the fact of magnetism. It's the fact of the physics in which we live, that with the magnets and with coordinating tension we make use of. Life can't live forever. It's great to be alive and pain-free. Read between the lines on everything. Yeah, on everything. Read between the lines. See behind the curtain. At least know that you're always looking at a curtain and there's always something going on behind it. And that in the same way that people look out of their eyes instead of you looking out of yours, you're a part of someone else's curtain, and there's something going on behind you, some of which you control and a lot of which you don't, right? So you have to add two and two, and by that monetarily I mean with money, right? I know that I'm selling Michael Miller trademark training materials, and I'm selling the instructions on how to do something for money. and I just tried something out recently on a PayPal every month pay thing, and I'm not looking to do that, and I canceled it before it started, right? So that whole thing of entanglement, there's a good word, entanglement is less and less of an issue. And the only entanglement I do is just send a request for payment for the instructions, and it's a pay once thing and it's done, right? And then whatever you do with the instructions that you now own because you bought them, that's up to you. You just can't put my trademark on it and sell them as your instructions, okay? That doesn't matter. Use the instructions and use your own trademark. So direct your thinking. I'm going through my closing comments. Direct your thinking. And that implicitly is a statement that encourages you to transcend your thinking. And it's not radical, and it doesn't mean you have to lose your mind. It just means that you have to recognize that when you direct your thinking, the you that's doing the directing has a lot of amygdala, hippocampus influence, which are baser parts of the brain. So direct your thinking, you know. It's sort of like saying don't forget to breathe, because in saying don't forget to breathe, you're talking about forgetting, which is a memory thing, and breathing, which is an autonomous thing that's ongoing and necessary, right? It's process. And so when you say remember to breathe, you're reminding the brain, you're doing a thinking thing with the brain, telling it to listen to and direct how the breathing is working. You know, be connected to the biological functions. So going after the performance of a very ideal choreography, say the Pilates mat work, is like striking a tuning fork. And that vibration that lingers in your body thereafter is a great thing. But it fades just like the vibration of a tuning fork, which is why people that are fanatic about Pilates, or at least take it seriously, or actually take any kind of conditioning seriously, they maintain a routine in what they do. Because there's a depth of reward to be gotten from maintaining the routine that you don't get from sporadic engagement, right? And so part of directing your thinking is being aware that the you that is you that directs your thinking is bigger than just your thinking, which is a huge leap in humility, I think, because my brain wants to ignore everything else that's out there and pretend that what's in my brain is the only thing that's real. But I think we all do that, right? And then we suffer to the point that what we project in our brain doesn't match up with the reality that's really out there. Which leads me to my last word, which is Geist, which is one's mind's eye. And there's a lot of acceptance and peace, I think, in engaging in one's, or engaging, or embracing one's Geist. There, I said that pretty well. Embracing one's Geist. Okay? All right.